into the rocket beginning at T-minus 16 minutes. We also heard a minute or so ago that the RP-1 kerosene load into stage 2 has been completed. So that's the first of the 4 main propellant tanks on the Falcon 9 to be filled this morning. Kerosene and liquid oxygen continue flowing into stage 1 and will continue to do so until the final few minutes of the countdown. In fact, the liquid oxygen loading will continue until around T-minus 2 minutes, when that loading will be ended and secured. And at that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with fuel and oxidizer, weighing around 1.2 million pounds, setting the stage for pressurization of the propellant tanks in the final minute of the countdown, and ultimately liftoff at 10:25 and 39 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. SpaceX's countdown is now passing T-minus 15 minutes and 20 seconds. SpaceX's launch team confirmed a moment ago that liquid oxygen has started loading into stage 2. Countdown remains on schedule for liftoff at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. This mission will feature the first landing of a first stage booster by SpaceX back at the Cape Canaveral spaceport since June. SpaceX typically lands its first stage boosters on drone ships positioned downrange in the ocean. However, for select missions that carry lighter payloads into low Earth orbit, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket reserves enough propellant for the booster to essentially reverse course and return to the launch site using a reignition of its Merlin engines. And that'll be the case on today's flight. The first stage will shut off at T plus 2 minutes and 19 seconds. leaving the second stage to continue its climb into orbit with the 105 small satellites on the Transporter 3 rideshare flight. Meanwhile, stage one itself, standing around 15 stories tall, will perform a flip maneuver using coal gas thrusters and then reignite a subset of its Merlin engines. That reignition, called a boostback burn, will essentially zero out the booster's downrange velocity and begin returning back toward the Florida coast as the rocket is near the von Karman line, near the edge of space at an altitude of around 60 miles or 100 kilometers, just southeast of Cape Canaveral. With that boost back burn complete, the Falcon 9 booster will coast to an apogee and then begin falling back toward Earth. It'll perform an entry burn to slow down and start guiding itself toward SpaceX's landing zone 1, and then a final landing burn using just the single Merlin engine in the web of 9 engines at the bottom of the booster will ultimately slow down the stage for a landing at Landing Zone 1, located around 9 miles south of Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Uh, this will be the 21st overall landing of a booster, of a Falcon first stage booster at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station since the very first Falcon recovery back in December 2015. And it'll be the 102nd intact recovery of a Falcon booster overall, including landings here at Cape Canaveral on SpaceX's fleet of drone ships, as well as 3 booster landings on land at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That landing of the first stage will be accompanied by a pair of double sonic booms and a roar from the Merlin engines as the booster makes its final descent back toward the ground. That landing expected around 8.5 minutes after liftoff.
sats, pocket cubes, and orbital transfer vehicles to sun-synchronous orbit. There will be a total of 82 deployments, which will begin around the T+1 hour mark and last for approximately 30 minutes. Now, due to the lack of ground station coverage at times and the position of our camera, we only expect a handful of our deployments to be visible today. However, we do expect to have telemetry and hear audio confirmation over the nets when in range of ground stations. To see the full list of today's deployments, head on over to SpaceX.com. With liftoff in just over 8 minutes from now, let's take a look to get acquainted with the rocket on your screen. Our two-stage launch vehicle stands about 70 meters tall when fully fueled, just over 1 million pounds of propellant that the vehicle will burn through in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. The first stage, which is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle, you can see it there on your screen, is the booster which has 9 Merlin engines that do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up to the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. At about 2.5 minutes into flight, it'll separate and make its way back to Earth and target a land landing back at Landing Zone 1, which you see there on your screen. Today's mission marks the 10th flight for this particular booster, which debuted in May 2020 on our Demo 2 mission to the International Space Station. You will notice the soot left over from its previous 9 flights. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. It connects the 2 stages and houses the pneumatic pushers that allow the first and second stage to separate during flight. Then on top of the inner stage is the Falcon 9 second stage, and that will take the payloads to their eventual destination in orbit. After the first stage separates, the second stage will then carry the 105 spacecraft to orbit. Right now, those satellites are enclosed inside the large nose cone that you see there. It's located on top of the rocket, and this is called the fairing. Its job is to protect the payload until the vehicle is outside the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. Today, we're flying a brand new fairing, and we will be attempting to recover the halves from the water once they return to Earth. The chief engineer at T-1 hour, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at T-38 minutes. Since T-35 minutes, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. Falcon propellant vehicle, which basically means it uses 2 types of propellants. For fuel, it's a refined form of kerosene called RP1, and the oxidizer is a super-chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage, and nearly fully loaded on, actually I'm seeing here, it is fully loaded on the first stage as well, and liquid oxygen loading is currently underway on both the first and second stages. We're also loading helium into storage vessels on the first and second stages. During flight, we will take that cold helium and run it through the heat exchangers on the Merlin engines. The resulting hot helium is used to fill the empty volume in the fuel and LOX tanks that's created by the engine pumps as they pull propellant out of the stage. At T-7 minutes, we began engine chill. This is where we opened the pre-valves between the first stage prop tanks and the 9 Merlin engines. This allows a little bit of cold liquid oxygen to flow through the turbo pumps, which brings them down to a temperature close to that of the super chilled propellant that will soon be flowing through the engines at liftoff. We're just about 4.5 minutes away from liftoff. The vehicle is healthy, and we're currently working no issues. The range is ready to support, and as for weather, we can see that it's a beautiful blue sky day in Florida. There is less than 10% chance of violating the launch commit criteria, so basically the weather rules. And we can see on the screen there that the clamps there around the second stage, just below the fairing, have begun to open. So at this point in time, Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of the countdown. There on your screen, you can see our strong back. That's part of the transporter erector, also called the TE. The TE is what we use to roll out the rocket from the launch pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. The TE is also what routes power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and the satellite. The transporter erector has the launch mount, and that's what the first stage is attached to, and the strong back that is hinged to the launch mount. And if you listen closely, you can hear the hissing and popping of pressure venting from the rocket and the plumbing in the transporter erector. As I mentioned before, LOX load is underway for both the first and second stages. RP1 loading is complete on both stages. And it looks like LOX load on the first stage just finished up. Vehicle remains in good health. The gaseous oxygen that you can start to see around the vehicle venting from the base of Falcon 9, that's from the chill-in of the Merlin turbopumps that occurred at T-minus 7 minutes. 1 minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's own internal computers are now autonomously controlling the launch countdown. As I mentioned before, our satellites they're inside the fairing. They continue to be healthy. Team is tracking no issues on the rocket. And as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at the same time. And we have just 2 minutes to go before launch. At this point in time, LOX load on the second stage has just completed. And we can see the white gaseous clouds around the vehicle as, like I said, LOX load is complete on second stage as well as first stage. So those lines will be venting from the TE.
Ground gas closeouts.
The next milestone we're coming up to is startup. You'll hear the call out for that at T-minus 1 minute. And that's the indication that the flight computer has taken over.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
All right, there's that call out. Falcon 9 is in startup. At this point in time, stage 1 and stage 2 are beginning to pressurize for launch.
LD, go for launch.
And there was our final go for launch today from our launch director. At this point in time, as we approach T-minus 30 seconds, all systems are go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Let's listen in to the final countdown.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
Gear pressures are nominal. Power and telemetry nominal.
All right, as you can see, Falcon 9 has cleared the tower, lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We just heard the call out that the vehicle is supersonic. We're currently going to throttle down the engines in preparation for max Q coming
Max
up.
Q.
Oh, there we heard it. So that was the moment of greatest aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will experience in flight today. Everything looking nominal with stage 1 trajectory. Now we have 5 events coming up in quick succession. MECO, or main engine cutoff, stage separation, stage 1 flip, second engine start 1, and the boost back burn. And you can follow along with those events there on the timeline at the bottom of your screen. Beautiful view of the Florida coastline. Main engine cutoff coming up in just under 30 seconds. As I mentioned before, we will be attempting to land the booster back on land at landing zone 1. This is known as return to launch site, as opposed to a drone ship landing.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Back startup.
1, boost back startup.
So you see there on the right-hand side of your screen, second stage Mvac engine has ignited. The first stage on the left-hand side is performing the boost back, which, as you saw just moments ago, the first stage flipped itself over and is now making its way back to the coast of Florida. Everything looking nominal with second stage trajectory there on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1, boost back shuttle.
All right, so there we heard the call out that the boost back burn has concluded. That was the first of 3 burns that the first stage will perform today. And we can see the grid fins beginning to deploy there on the left-hand side of your screen. The next event we have coming up is fairing deployment. All right, there you can see the 2 fairing halves have separated, fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 105 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. As a reminder, we will be attempting to recover these brand new fairing halves once they make their way back to Earth. We're currently in the first of 2 Mvac burns. This first one will last until T plus 8 minutes and 26 seconds, about another 4 minutes from now. Beautiful views from the first stage there on the left-hand side of your screen and the second stage on the right. The next milestone will be the first stage booster re-entry burn. Falcon 9 executes an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense part of the atmosphere. Without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow down the Falcon 9 would put unnecessary strain on the rocket. And there we can see the east coast of Florida.
Stage 2 on a nominal trajectory.
Space Coast there in the background of on the left-hand side. Once again, we are launching the Transporter 3 mission today. This is SpaceX's 3rd dedicated smallsat rideshare program mission, and it's our 2nd mission of 2022. SpaceX is targeting at least 3 dedicated rideshare flights to sun-synchronous orbit per year, and we also offer opportunities for a ride to orbit on our Starlink missions, which launch every couple of weeks. Smallsats can ride to space on SpaceX's Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, as well as Starship in the not-too-distant future. On the left-hand side of your screen, we can see those grid fins have deployed. Falcon 9 has 4 hypersonic grid fins positioned at the base of the inner stage, and they orient the rocket during reentry by moving the center of pressure. We can also see some white puffs of gas coming off from Falcon 9. Those are cold nitrogen gas which help with attitude control. After first stage landing, the second stage will cut off its Mvac engine and relight it approximately 45 minutes later for deployment of all 105 spacecraft. As for first stage, its next event is the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there on your screen, we can see that that entry burn has begun. Once again, this burn is designed to slow the booster down as it returns through the dense part of the atmosphere.
Stage 2 on nominal trajectory.
As we just heard there,
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
everything continuing to look good with second stage. As I mentioned earlier, we will be attempting to recover this booster for the 10th time today, and we're targeting a land landing at landing zone 1. The first stage has just one more burn left, the
Stage
landing
1
burn.
FTS is safe.
It begins just before touchdown and provides the booster a soft descent before landing. About the same time that Falcon lands, we are expecting SECO, or second engine cutoff, 1 of our second stage. Just a few seconds away from landing,
Stage
and
1 is transonic.
vehicles traveling around 900 miles per hour really puts the deceleration into perspective. In the span of less than a minute, we'll have reduced from twice the speed of a
Stage
jet
1 landing burn.
all the way down to 0 as the rocket lands. There's a view on the right-hand side
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
of the landing back at landing zone 1.
Stage 1 landing wing support. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
As you heard from the call out there and from the cheers behind me, we have successfully landed this Falcon 9 for the 10th time. It's also the one recovery of an orbital class rocket.
Nominal parking orbit.
All right, so we just heard there, second stage had a good orbit. So we cut off or shut down the Mvac engine on the second stage. And as we just heard, we had good orbit. So we're now going to coast for the next 45 minutes or so while we wait for second engine start 2, or SES 2. We'll see you back here at around T plus 55 minutes.
Expected LOS keep.